I've always believed that dogs can sense things humans can't. Maybe it's their hearing, or maybe it's something deeper, something spiritual. But I never thought I'd live through a moment that would make me question everything about what's real and what's not. It started on a quiet Sunday evening. I had just moved into a small 2-bedroom house on the edge of town, an old rental that came cheap because, as the landlord put it, it's been empty for a while. My golden retriever, Milo, seemed to love it instantly. He spent hours sniffing every corner, tail wagging, exploring like it was his new kingdom. But that night, things felt off. Around midnight, as I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone, Milo suddenly froze. His ears perked up, tail lowered, and his eyes locked on the far corner of the living room, a spot just beside the old bookshelf. There was nothing there. No sound. No movement. "Milo?" I whispered, setting my phone down. His body stiffened, then he let out a low, deep growl, the kind I'd never heard from him before. The fur along his spine rose as he barked sharply, his gaze fixed on that same empty corner. I turned on all the lights, checked behind the shelf, even under the furniture. Nothing. I figured maybe it was a mouse or the sound of wind. But even when I tried to distract him, he wouldn't move. He just stood there, growling at something unseen. Eventually, after about 15 minutes, he stopped. He walked in a slow circle, whined once, and then lay down right in front of that corner, like he was guarding me from it. I remember laughing nervously. "You're such a drama queen," I said. But something deep inside told me it wasn't just drama. That night, I woke up around 3:12 a.m. to the sound of Milo barking again. But this time, it wasn't angry barking, it was scared. When I stumbled out of bed, half asleep, Milo was standing in the living room, his body facing that same corner. His growl was low and trembling. "Milo, stop it," I said softly, walking closer. But he didn't even look at me. His eyes were glued to something. His body was shaking. Then, for the first time in my life, I heard him whimper, a soft, frightened sound that made my chest tighten. That's when I noticed something strange. Even though every window was closed, the air in the room felt icy cold. I could see my breath. I glanced toward the thermostat. It read 72 degrees Fahrenheit. "Milo," I whispered again, and as I took another step, something flickered. Just for a split second, like a camera flash without the light. The shadow in the corner seemed to shift. I froze. It wasn't that the light moved, it was that the darkness itself moved. A shape, tall, almost human, flickered against the wall. And then it was gone. Milo barked so violently that he knocked over a small table. I ran to him and grabbed his collar, but he refused to move away from the corner. His body was trembling, his eyes wide. I could feel his heart racing under my hand. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. The next morning, I told my neighbor about it. She was an older woman named Mrs. Green who had lived next door for 30 years. When I described the barking and the cold air, her expression changed. "You're staying in the Peterson house?" she asked quietly. "Yeah." "Why?" She hesitated. "There was a man who lived there years ago. Lived alone. People said he started talking to someone who wasn't there. Claimed something stood in that same corner every night. The day they found him, the dog was still sitting there staring." I laughed it off, but my hands were shaking. When I got home, Milo was sitting in the same place again, facing the corner. Tail down. Silent. That evening, I decided to record it. I set up my phone on a chair, pointed it toward the corner, and hit record. I left the room for an hour. When I came back, I found Milo lying on the floor, exhausted, like he'd been barking the entire time. When I played the video back, the hair on my neck stood up. Around the 47-minute mark, the screen flickered, and I could hear a faint whisper. Then, a small black blur passed in front of the camera. It wasn't dust. It wasn't light. It was a shape that bent the air around it. And right before the video cut off, A voice, deep and distant, said my name. For 2 days, I couldn't eat or sleep. I unplugged everything, even considered leaving the house. But then I told myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the sound was something from outside, the blur just camera distortion. But Milo knew. He wouldn't go near that corner anymore. He avoided the living room completely, choosing to sleep by my bed, shaking in his sleep. On the 3rd night, I decided I needed proof, or closure. I moved a chair into the middle of the living room, turned off every light, and sat down with a flashlight. The house was silent except for the ticking clock. "Milo?" I said quietly. He whimpered from the hallway. I pointed the flashlight at the corner. Nothing. "Whatever's here," I said, my voice shaking, "you need to leave." The words hung in the air. Then, slowly, like a breath I didn't take, the temperature dropped again. The beam of the flashlight flickered, and for a heartbeat, I saw something. A figure. A tall, pale man standing half in the shadow, half out. His head was tilted slightly, and his face, it wasn't angry. It was empty. His eyes were deep hollows, his mouth open as if frozen mid-scream. And at his feet was a dog. A ghostly outline of one. Both stared straight at me before vanishing, like dust blowing away in the wind. The next thing I remember, I was on the floor with Milo licking my face, whining. I don't know how long I was out. But the air was warm again, and the corner looked normal. The following morning, I went straight to Mrs. Green's house. She opened the door, and I told her everything. When I mentioned the figure of a dog, she went pale. "The man who lived there," she whispered, "his dog died in that corner. He used to sit beside it every night. When he passed, people said they still heard the dog bark." I never stayed another night after that. A month later, I moved across town. Milo hasn't barked at an empty corner since. But sometimes, when the house is quiet, I still catch him staring, just for a few seconds, at the wall. His ears perk up, and his tail goes still. And every time that happens, I turn on every light in the house, just in case.